how to learn pitch accent without being overwhelmed. So Japanese words have their own pitch patterns. If I say sensha, it means a tank as in a military vehicle. But if I say sensha, it means car wash as in washing your car. So what's the difference? It's the pitch pattern. Sensha, tank, has a high-low pitch pattern. Sensha, But sensha, car wash, has a low-high pitch pattern. Sensha, So pitch patterns change meanings. But many people feel reluctant to learn pitch patterns because they think it's too difficult. But in my opinion, many people make pitch accent more difficult than it should be. And here's why. One obvious reason is natural conversations are too fast for beginners. If I say sensha, tank, slowly, it's probably not that hard to follow the movement of the pitch pattern. But if I say sensha, it's probably much harder because it's fast, and that's expected if you're a beginner. When I started learning English, conversations between native speakers were just too fast to follow. But as I learned more English, it became easier. So that's expected. But I don't think that's the biggest reason why people find pitch accent more difficult than it should be. It's because you haven't learned Japanese with me, because if you do, I will teach you the kind of Japanese that real-life Japanese people today actually speak, because textbooks and apps give you very unnatural and sometimes incorrect examples. So click the link in the description and subscribe to my email group. But seriously, I think the biggest reason is people approach pitch patterns from a very analytical perspective. They think learning pitch accent is equal to learning how to consciously analyze pitch patterns. It can help, but analyzing is not the goal. It's just one of the tools to learn pitch accent. If this tool works for you, that's great, but if it doesn't, you can try something else. Repeat this word after me while paying attention to the pitch pattern. 行く, to go. I hope you could repeat after me. Now tell me which is higher, the first syllable or the second syllable. Even if you could perfectly replicate the pitch pattern, many of you might have trouble analyzing, which is higher, the first syllable or the second syllable. Consciously analyzing is much more difficult than simply repeating the melody, the pitch pattern. And it's gonna get more complicated, because in standard Japanese, we have 4 different patterns. High, low, 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 high, low, low, high, high, and another low, high, high. That makes the following particle low. But let's talk about 3 to keep it simple. So an example of high, low, low is pochita. Pochita. High, low, low. An example of low, high, low is sugoi. Amazing. Sugoi. Low, high, low. An example of low, high, high is daiji. Important. Daiji. Low, high, high. Now let me give you a very simple word to see if you can trace the pitch pattern. Repeat after me. 斜め75度の並びで泣く泣くいななく7半7台難なく並べて長々め。Very easy, right? Okay, let me try another word. 眠い, sleepy. I'm gonna say it slowly, so repeat after me while tracing the pitch pattern. 眠い. I hope you could do it. Now, which of the 3 patterns is this? Is it high, low, low, or low, high, low, or low, high, high? People typically find it hard to consciously identify the pitch pattern, even if they can actually repeat the phrase or word. And it can get more complicated when it comes to a longer word or a sentence. How about this? ありがとうございます. And what's the pitch pattern? Most of you guys find it hard to tell which syllable is higher than which syllables. And this is difficult for native speakers too, I hire native Japanese speakers to add Japanese subtitles to my videos, and I also ask them to visualize pitch patterns. And they always make mistakes. Sometimes it takes several revisions to get it right. Even if I tell them this is high, this is low, this is high, when they try to visualize, they manage to get it wrong. And they speak standard Japanese with the perfect pitch accent. So consciously analyzing pitch pattern is very hard. And those pitch patterns are simplified. For example, if I say すごい, the word すごい has a low, high, low pitch pattern. But in reality, with すごい, the first syllable is actually lower than the third syllable. And with go, the pitch rises. But it doesn't matter semantically, so we just say low, high, low for convenience. So if you think learning pitch accent is the same as learning how to analyze pitch patterns, it makes sense that you find it overwhelming because it's very difficult. But that's not the only way of learning pitch accent. There's another way, which is a more intuitive approach. And I guarantee you, you can already understand pitch patterns intuitively. For example, in English, you have this expression, as in yes. If you ask me, have you watched The Dangers in My Heart? I could just say, to say yes. But instead of saying, what if I said, Doesn't it sound weird? Have you watched The Dangers in My Heart? Does it sound weird? The only difference between and is the pitch pattern. It's exactly the same as sensha, car wash, They have the exact same pitch pattern, low and high, and sensha, tank, So if you think saying instead of sounds weird, it means you already understand different pitch patterns. Here's another expression. As in, I forgot to pay the electric bill. What if I said instead of Doesn't it sound weird? I forgot to pay my electric bill. Doesn't it sound weird? So you already understand pitch patterns. It feels more difficult because it's another language. It's also kind of like music. If I sing you understand what song this is, right? But if I asked you to transcribe this and write sheet music, unless you studied music, you can't do it. It's the same. So pitch accent is like that. You can perfectly learn how to sing the melody, the pitch patterns, without analyzing it all the time. Now, I'm not saying analyzing is completely useless. If it works for you, you don't have to stop doing that. Learning the basic patterns and practicing them is a good idea. But if you have trouble analyzing pitch patterns, don't think you can't learn pitch accent. You definitely can. It's like grammatical theories. Learning the basics can help. But if you try to analyze everything, it gets impractical. But once you get the hang of it, you can learn it by tracing the melody. And anime are actually very useful to learn pitch patterns because they tend to speak clearly and slowly. I'm gonna show you how. First, find a sentence that you like.
そうだね、アクア。
そうだね、アクア. And if it's too fast, you can slow it down.
そうだね、アクア。
そうだね、アクア. And you should also record yourself and compare it to the original one. そうだね、アクア. そうだね、アクア. Do you wanna try another one?
眠いんだよね。収録早すぎてさ。あ、眠いんだよね。
眠いんだよね. Yeah, if a sentence is too long, you can just break it down into smaller parts. No problem. And I find it pretty fun. It's pretty fun to speak Japanese like anime characters, even if I typically say don't speak like anime characters. And you might think this is too simple, but if you keep doing this, it will make a huge difference. Because you will get better and better at detecting pitch patterns, and eventually you will be able to do it even if it's fast. So try it and see how far you can go. Now, some people say, Oh, but there's many different dialects that have different pitch patterns. But what they don't know is that even if you live in a different region in Japan and speak a different dialect, most of the time, if you grew up in Japan, you will also speak standard Japanese with the standard pitch accent. Japanese has different levels of respectfulness, and when we speak keigo or honorific language, which we use when we talk to strangers, for example, we actually use standard Japanese with the standard pitch accent for the most part. So regardless of where they live in Japan, they can speak standard Japanese with the standard pitch accent, even though they might not be 100% perfect. They're basically like bilinguals of their dialect and standard Japanese. And that's also what we learn in school. And if you turn on TV or Netflix shows, most of the time people speak standard Japanese, or at least Tokyo Japanese. So if you speak standard Japanese, everybody in Japan can understand you. But if you speak a very strong dialect, that's not always the case. And even with dialects, a lot of them are actually variations of Tokyo dialect, which standard Japanese is based on. Look at this map. Any shade of blue is a variation of Tokyo accent. So it makes no sense to say that the standard pitch accent isn't useful because of regional dialects. Another thing that people often say is that it's okay not to learn pitch accent as long as you can communicate. And that's a valid point. I have had trouble understanding non-native speakers because of their pitch accent. But in real life, you can always ask questions like, oh, what did you mean by that? Sorry, can you say it again? Or maybe can you say it in English? So it's not going to be a huge problem when it comes to communication. It ultimately comes down to your preference. How do you want to sound? Do you want smooth communication? Do you want to sound like a native speaker? Or maybe you'll find if Japanese people can understand more or less. I guess it's kind of like clothes, because some people are okay as long as they're not naked. Some people want to dress better, or some people want to communicate through their fashion. Personally, I like natural real-life Japanese, so that's why I specialize in teaching you the kind of Japanese that real-life Japanese people today actually speak, because textbooks and apps just sound too weird to me. So click the link and subscribe to my email group, Japanese with Yuta.